Hey guys, I missed you. So let's
We missed
start.
you too.
Do we have agenda for today?
So he has discuss union semantics, review, update on to-dos below, which is kind of a hunted agenda item, and then review open GitHub issues.
Was there a discussion about like renaming alias back to name?
I think we voted on that and then landed
Yeah.
on renaming to name and also making it required.
Mm-hmm. Can anybody
Yeah,
give us the comments?
yeah. I mean, we talked about that a bit last week, and I think there was some discussion in the chat, and then a vote on it. And I think I think it came in fairly heavily on renaming alias to name, and then making it required exactly as Dan mentioned. And so I went ahead and actually made that change. There was actually it came across. There's actually we need the next version of the IG publisher to be updated to actually update the site because it looked like the IG publisher might have had something that was pinned on alias. But Graham has I think Graham fixed it. It's going to be out in the next publisher release, which hopefully it looks like they're taking it and getting ready for release now. So hopefully the IG publisher release will fix that soon, and we'll be able to reflect it there. But yeah, the changes are made in the SQL on FHIR v2 GitHub repo, but they're not visible on the site yet because the site has not rebuilt because the IG publisher changes need to happen. So I guess it's starting real when stuff actually breaks when we make breaking changes. So but hopefully that will go away soon. But yeah, that's where that is.
But what was the motivation behind, like, because it's becoming required? So I remember we discussed like generating names from past expression, yes? And that was the start for that, yeah?
I think we kind of went around on a few iterations on that, and then there was like some concerns of like, well, I mean, there's a database length limit from some of the path expressions, and you could still have collisions if you kind of replaced special characters and that sort of thing that could still happen, and so that might not be workable for like those length concerns. And then there was some discussion of like, oh, maybe we could take just append like an underscore. If there's name collisions, we can append an _1 and _2. But then that seemed a little bit confusing, at least to me. I kind of like the property of being able to look at a view and being very confident, and I know exactly what I'm going to get. So it seemed like while I had been a proponent of making name optional, I think from my perspective, it changed a little bit of it seemed to be creating more confusion than it was worth. And so, and it sounds like others maybe reached a similar conclusion, or at least that was reflected in the vote. So name became required, but with I think that the idea like, hey, if folks build tooling to sort of author these things or otherwise, they could generate the names, within the tooling from that. So that's kind of where we are there.
Mm-hmm.
It's worth saying, we also spent a little bit of time with Graham talking about the implications of required fields. And we all know there are places where FHIR resources might have a required field, but some software is capable of working even when it's missing. Graham pointed out examples like that in some of his pipelines. And that made me a little bit more comfortable with this. Like, yeah, we're going to say if you want to send these things from point A to point B, it should be there. But it doesn't mean that software is going to throw up and explicitly break just because it's missing.
Thanks, Josh. That was, for catching that. That was definitely a point of discussion that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And I just want a little bit reflect on this, like renaming name to alias and then back for the future to understand, why it's happened, and can we maybe that's good and this is our way, but maybe we can prevent like this breaking changes, because now a lot of POC software broken after that. Yes, so can we a little bit reason and decide how we're gonna make these decisions? I don't know. I think we voted for alias and we got this renaming name to alias one refactoring, and then something happened, so we decided go back.
So first of all, I absolutely agree. We need to figure out a way to manage changes and prevent. I mean, hopefully we'll have few, if any, breaking changes going forward. So that said, if there's if at least from my perspective, if we felt like something was going to cause confusion for years to come, then it was worth making a breaking change now. And I felt like that was maybe here. As for how, I mean, I can share my recollection on how we went from name to alias and then alias back to name, and others can chime in as well. I think that the name to alias shift was at a point where we kind of thought that, hey, for many columns we would be able to infer the column name / alias from the FHIR path itself. But then as we went deeper, like in that discussion I just listed of like, hey, there's many cases where we don't think we'll be able to infer it. It's really confusing. So at that point, it's going to be required anyway. And perhaps the more clear name for it is name rather than alias. I think that is arguably less confusing for folks new to the spec. They see column name and they know exactly what that means in that setting. So I think the idea there is that it hopefully avoids some confusion for new users for years to come and was therefore justified. That said, it's like we need to be increasingly judicious about this sort of thing, because I don't know, I'm kind of hopeful that we won't make any more breaking changes, but I don't think we're quite ready to commit to that yet.
Yeah, let's start maybe thinking this meta level, because eventually it would be nice if it don't make a lot of strange breaking changes. Yeah, that's what we struggle with FHIR. FHIR renames something, yes. So
I'm going to create a discussion thread on our Zulip channel called "It has been blank days since our last breaking change," just so I can surface this. So we're at 7 now.
We need a bot that does that automatically or something.
Once I've done it 3 times, I'll think about a bot.
Okay, so the next topic is union. I think we close to pin it. I don't know who can present the union and the final vision.
I can try, because I put some tests in and we had a little bit of discussion and then I updated those tests. So I think where we landed is you can have a union, anywhere you've got our generic select structure. It sits next to select and it's an array of things. And each of those things needs to have the same columns inside of it. It's an error if your union has 2 parts that don't have exactly the same columns, but they could be nested at different levels or defined in different ways. Just the set of columns and the order inside each needs to match. I think those were kind of the hard parts that we talked about on Zulip. And so if you really want to have different columns for some reason, you can explicitly set one column to null in the first branch and the other column to null in the second branch. So you can still have that behavior if you really need it, but we don't think it's a common case, so we don't want to optimize for it.
Should we force the same columns in all union expressions and like fail if it's not explicitly stated that this column should be null or missed?
Implementations have to fail if you don't want to, but it feels to me like it makes it easier to implement if you can assume that you're going to have a constant number of columns and the ordering and things like that are similar.
I was wondering like what the definition of same columns is, so how do you figure out whether the columns are the same? If they were, say, the same type or inferable to the same type, it'd probably be technically possible to union them, but what are we saying about it, if anything?
I think name should be the same, yes, and probably type.
Yeah, I mean, right now in the reference implementation and the test suite, what I'm doing is just looking at the set of column names, and I say I expect an error if the names are not the same. I haven't said anything about what should happen if the names are the same. So, for example, the case where the names line up but the types don't, I haven't taken any perspective on yet. And I don't know that we need to get super deep into testing errors here so much as just setting up the expectation for how this feature is going to be used. If people want to really push the boundaries for some reason, let's see where that happens and where they complain. I think we can have a little bit of undefined behavior around those edges for now.
Yeah, I don't think you should be required to fail if all those conditions aren't met, but more the opposite. You should be required to succeed if they are met. That makes sense.
Yeah, DuckDB has union all by name, which I think is basically the behavior we're describing. The only difference is, or I guess one open question, which is I think related to this error, when the error is if you have types that are incompatible in the two columns with the same name in the union, it'll, if it can kind of, if they're close, it'll pick a union type for them. So if you have like two numeric types, but it'll allow you to do it. But if you have two types that are can't be in the same column, then it'll error, or at least it used to. I don't know. They have union types now, so that might not error in all instances. But that feels a little bit implementation specific. So, potentially some databases could allow you to, might coerce types to string, or might like let you mix types. So I like the idea of leaving that kind of undefined for now, and being strict on making sure that the number and names of the columns in the two sections being unioned are the same.
How do we deal with like validating column names in general? So, outside of union, do we sort of make sure that column names are unique, but inside union, you can have columns the same name? Is that right?
Yeah, that sounds right.
And it's okay to have like nested selects inside of union as long as all the column names line up and are the same type,
Yeah.
more or less.
If you want to check, you can kind of walk down through the hierarchy and collect all the column names and compare them. For me, still the question, if you missed one column, yes, and one of expressions, again, so we can unspecify this behavior, yes. So somebody may decide to just set null by default, yes, or somebody may decide fail on this. Should we specify this, like the same set of columns should be in every expression? Is it recommended to fail or set to null?
Having the requirement that every expression, I mean, one nice thing is like if I can look at the top level for the first expression and say that's the columns I'm getting, as opposed to potentially arbitrarily deep down some tree to find, oh, we add like some surprise column there. Yeah, so I mean, I guess I would lean towards just requiring them in every expression. But this could be like another one of those cases where I mean, similar to like the name being required, it's like, yeah, we can like require the spec and we can have like a validator that would check that. But if somebody's like authoring it interactively, maybe it's more lenient, in a non-shareable state.
I just want to make sure I understand. Ryan, I heard you to be saying you'd like to know that if you analyze what's happening in the first branch of our union, the answer you get is going to be the same as the answer you would get from any other branch. That makes sense to me. I don't think you were saying you shouldn't have to recurse within that first branch to find all the columns. That might still be fair game, right?
Yeah, I mean, if there's nested selects or that sort of thing, I guess like, yeah, I think that's fair. So yeah, but basically, if I mean, a union is a list of I mean, presumably multiple selects. It doesn't make sense, but each like branch under the union should bubble up the same columns back to the union level.
Yeah, that makes sense, and it's consistent with what I'm testing right now in the JavaScript implementation. Although the only thing I check about columns is their name.
Yeah, and I think maybe we can start with that. It's like the type one is an interesting discussion. I mean, I'm happy to chat. I do suspect that I mean, I'm just thinking about looking at the various implementations. I think damaged like the DuckDB one, and I know like the way that I would see this working in BigQuery is like the column names, the column for each branch of the union would need to be the same type, or at least a type that is coercible from one to another. So it's a smaller integer could be promoted to like a numeric type or something like that. But so I'd be tempted to have some sort of requirement around the types there. Maybe it's like they're the same FHIR type or something along those lines. But I mean, we could come back to that as well.
There is sort of like rules around type coercion in FHIR, and we implement those rules, and we could allow that and use that mechanism that we've already implemented for the type coercion in FHIR to do that same sort of thing in union. But I'm not sure if we should specify it.
I think we will struggle a lot with all these two type systems, or not even two type systems here, like database and FHIR type system. So for puzzling, that's okay. Yeah, if you guys implementing this in Java kind of in a pure way, but for the databases like DuckDB, I don't know, BigQuery, which already have their own type system, yes, that's gonna be the challenge and I don't know, the problem all the time. That's what I'm feeling. I don't know. I think, yeah, maybe let's wait for some implementation, but I think this is a kind of big topic, huge topic we should discuss and I don't know, maybe introduce ANSI types or something like this. Do the mapping between FHIR types and ANSI types.
We have union alongside select. So how do they get combined? So currently we have a select and we have column inside select, like an array of columns. And then we either have for each or null or union, but only one of them. So we can have a union there, and we can also have a select alongside it.
So I think it's a mistake. The spec currently says that you can only have one of for each or null or union. We did talk through this in Zulip. I think it's supposed to say you can only have for each or null. Those two can't be combined. But I think it's a mistake that constraint mentions union, and we drafted updated constraints in the chat.
Yeah, I think that's right, and yeah, I think that we've been trying to get at least I've been trying to make sure we have a general understanding of union semantics, and we really need to take a path and update those. I feel like we're getting fairly close now, so yeah, so I think that maybe it's a question of trying to take it a pass at updating the spec with our current understanding. It sounds like. I mean, so it sounds like it's union all. It's changing the FHIR or the constraints on the resource appropriately, like Josh outlined. And yeah, I'm kind of working through these. So maybe that's the next step here. I guess, yeah. So I could take a pass at updating the spec. I don't know, Josh, unless you're interested in doing so, since you're a little more hands, you might have know the nuances a little bit better. But yeah, I'm fine with taking a pass at it later this week as well.
Yeah, I'd be delighted if you want to do it, or if you were willing to do it. The other question that it's worth talking through here is the interaction between if you have a bunch of selects and a union in the same, what do we call our top level object, you think? Well, if you have one of our structures and it's got some selects and a union inside, I think what happens is that you take the Cartesian product of all the selects with any of the rows in the union. So I think the union output is also Cartesian producted with the rest.
Yeah, I mean, really from like an external perspective, and this is, I think that the union itself is like effectively like another select. So if I had two sibling selects, we've defined how those work. It's like a Cartesian product. And if I have a union with a sibling select, it would also be like a Cartesian product. Just that the union happens to have like multiple child selects that it kind of glues together, but effectively, like semantically, like a union, I feel like would work very much like another select in terms of like the join behavior with sibling selects or sibling unions for that matter, if we want to go down that path. And so I think that I think we can define that in a consistent way.
Yeah, for me, it's like for each. Yeah, so union behaves like for each, so it generates like tuples.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, exactly. I mean, it produces a for each. Now, yeah, now it's a little bit. I mean, for each plays a different role because for each specifies like the path to which the items within that select apply. So you could have like a for each and a union, and just as you can have a for each and a select. So it's just like the select would apply to the path that's specified by the for each, and then similarly, I would expect a union to apply to the path that's selected by the for each. But it's kind of, yeah, so there's a lot of variables here, and I think that having this documented in concrete examples might help, because I don't even know. It's easy to confuse myself while talking this through, and I imagine I'm not the only one that's confusing themselves.
Interaction of for each with sibling expressions is the same like for union, yes. Maybe we need to introduce something like, I don't know, like operational semantic, some model which we can use to describe the behavior, like maybe like in JavaScript, like we're generating tuples, we're joining, and use this simplified like model language to describe how it should behave.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like everything's a Cartesian product, right? Except things that are constrained by a for each or null block. Everything you add is actually Cartesian product.
Yeah, so anything that are siblings are Cartesian products, or like aunt and uncle, or like aunt and uncle, niece and nephew type relationships would be Cartesian products. Now, like but parent-child relationships, of course, would be kind of bubble up like that. So, right, if you have a person with multiple addresses and you list like their all their street names, those would bubble up to the parents of those if you have like parent-childs of that. Which I think is documented, but again, it's like this all needs to be expanded. And so, yeah, there's getting all these details right is quite a challenge. So I definitely encourage folks to I mean, contributions or rephrasing or adjustment in the spec are welcome to clarify that as well.
Yeah, maybe
Yeah,
we
hopefully we
implementation.
Okay.
Yeah. So I will play with it. Maybe come up with it. Like JavaScript, like step by step, like pseudocode execution.
Good. I mean, I think we can also tackle some of that with tests. So like in terms of, what happens with nested versus sibling elements, I guess. I need naming for all this, or structures, then like I think we can pretty easily write some tests also that'll like make that behavior a little bit clear for implementers, particularly if we like use very narrow resources that only have a couple fields, so it's like clear what's happening.
Yeah, I was trying to look for tests around nested selects, like select. I'm not sure.
I don't think I wrote any of those. Yeah, I think some of this was invented after I wrote the tests. So
actually,
there's probably another round.
Actually, some of Josh's new union tests kind of cover this off, but not in isolation, alongside union. But perhaps we need like some that are just around nested selects specifically as well.
I think that would be good. It's if there's some that you want to add, I'd say go for it. And if they unmask problems or different assumptions, we can work through it.
Okay, so who wants to take on this sort of unenviable task of actually writing up the union? Because at the moment we've got a sort of big to do on it and a sort of quite wrong sort of current description against it.
Yeah, I can take an initial pass at the spec. So I'm happy to do that, and I'll try to get to it later this week. But I'll just set expectations. My first draft will be less wrong than what we have now, and then hopefully we'll continue making it less wrong from there. But yeah, I think it'll be a couple of passes through this. It's really define it right.
So I know, John, you start working on like reporting test results.
I did, but then I went back to updating the structure based on changes that we've been made. So, but I think it's maybe like a little bit premature for that anyway. I mean, that our tests at least were passing everything except the union. So hopefully keeping up with the other implementations. In terms of the report, yeah, I had an idea that I would go ahead and do what we said we were going to do and add an extra field into the test structure and put the results there or whatever. And then there would be a piece of work to actually have a think about how we render this out and all the rest of it. But I haven't had a chance to do that yet. What I did do in this last week was make the change about the get reference key clarifications that we had. So we still need to merge that. And I think we're kind of stuck with the merging and publishing, as Ryan said, at the moment. I think I'm okay to go ahead and finish updating the structure and hopefully the pathling tests at least will all be passing at that point if we have nailed down the union semantics. and then it'll just be a case of adding more tests, I think.
Yeah, I'm more interested to set up this infrastructure. Yeah, so our engineers from Health Samurai are gonna do this for 8box. So it would be nice to have like 3 implementation and agree on this test results data structure. So should we maybe write some JSON schema for that? But I think it's essentially the same structure as a test. Yes, plus some extra field.
And did you have an idea about how that would actually work? Like, will we have like an S3 bucket or something that we push these results into, or how will we actually collect?
Yeah, the ideally that was the original idea. You register the URL, which is accessible through the HTTP with the course turn on, ideally for the reporting part. So it could be any HTTP server, it could be S3 bucket or I know engine.
It could be in the GitHub pages of your documentation output, as long as it's a stable URL.
And how will it know which individual URLs to hit? You know, so will you publish like a file for each of the test files at that location, or?
That's the question. So for now we can publish everything, like all test results and as a one file. But, or we can publish one by one.
Yeah, I think it's okay if you just have a pile of JSON files in the same folder, or we can fetch them all, and we might get 400s for some of them, 404s for some of them if you haven't done those tests. It seems okay. I do like having a correspondence between the structure of our test suite files and the structure of the output files, but I could be talked into rolling them all up into a single file.
Yeah, for now, for this report, we will fix it, but I just did one file for simplicity to load into single page application. But yeah, I agree. So it could be like the same layout as a tests files. Yeah, there's still question about like the version of the tests, and maybe put some commit or something like this so we can understand that it's up to date tests. Yes, and maybe even timestamp when the tests were run. Okay, so let's we will start implementing this, and let's discuss it in Zulip and try to make this matrix working.
And then where will this thing live? Like, so presumably we'll have, like, is this part of the spec build? Like, does it go off?
In a spec, you do register the record with your implementation. It's a small JSON with a bunch of links and names. So you kind of like, just one JSON for your implementation, with a description and with the links to the sites, with a link to the tests. And I think that's nice. So we will keep this registry and accept it through the pull requests from other implementers. But the general idea, the implementation is like pull requested into this repo and the small JSON file.
Nikolai, I don't know if you've seen it, but I also, I guess maybe last week or the week before, added a page to the playground or added the playground page content.
Yep.
It doesn't do much right now, but it just loads one of the test files and lets you live edit the tests and see what the results look like.
Sorry, that was my plan, but I just missed this couple of weeks. I will get back.
Yeah, feel free to tear it apart. But the main thing I wanted to test was just making sure that I had an easy way to load the reference implementation code client side. So that part is worked out, and you can rip the UI to shreds.
So I actually think that we should do exactly what Ajin says and review our to-dos, but also review our GitHub issues, because I think there's some sort of tasks in there that are maybe good, important tasks in the GitHub issues that we actually haven't thought about for a while, and maybe we should just clean it up, delete any that are not relevant, and assign any that are relevant.
Yeah, can you share the screen and maybe let's walk through it?
Yeah, while you're pulling it up, I want to ask one quick question that I don't see in the GitHub issues, but I want to make sure before I push this change, I think we agreed to rename union to union all. If that's right, I'll update the tests accordingly.
Yeah, I think that is correct.
Cool. All right. Thanks.
Okay,
Or
so
at least that's what I'm going to write in the spec. I'm sorry. Go.
yeah, it also strikes me that we've kind of got like 2 to-do lists. So maybe like going forwards, we should actually just turn to-dos from like the actions just straight into GitHub issues, just so that we have one way of representing tasks. Maybe I'm just being a little bit pedantic there.
No, that's a good idea.
So I did this one, the get reference key and the get resource key stuff. So that's just a pull request waiting to be merged. I also went through and like just fixed up a lot of sort of typographical areas that I found through the spec. So that's another pull request. This one, Ryan, is this with the alias to name, is that actually a pull request yet, or
that actually is merged, but it's the site hasn't been rebuilt and updated because of the implement or the publisher issue that hopefully will be fixed in the next couple of days. And yeah, but made that's merged. That's actually the reason why the publisher isn't currently building. We could roll that change back until the publisher gets fixed, but yeah, I don't know. I think hopefully it will get fixed soon. So I kind of want to just continue building on head.
Okay, cool. Ryan, to add notes on column ordering behavior and some examples. Do you remember what that one was about?
Yeah, so that was just another documentation clarification. And unfortunately, I don't think it may not. Well, actually, I think this one did make it to the site before the publisher issue popped up. Yeah, I've done that, and so it's basically just some clarifying. We hadn't previously specified that the order of columns that was produced, and I basically just added a document and examples that reflected that. You can find that in the view definition page now. So yeah, so that's there, and if something's wrong with it, we can obviously edit further.
Okay, cool. Nikolai, to set up CI/CD in AidBox. You're on mute.
Yeah. So Health Samurai team is gonna work on this. So hope this week, yeah, we will kind of produce a report on that and try to aggregate it on this page, like to show how it may look like. Yeah.
Would you like anything represented in our GitHub issues for that, or is that sort of a separate thing specific to your implementation?
I think that for the spec, it's important that we have few implementation which are publishing test results, so other can look and do the same. So that's just an example. Yeah, I did like simple publishing for reference implementation.
So maybe we need a ticket that's about
like
finishing off the infrastructure for publishing results.
Yeah, the general issue, yeah, how and description, how to publish results, how to pull requests, the entry in registry, something like this. Yeah, how implementation can publish, yeah, test results. And I promised to Brian we need some separate page to describe how implementation can do this, like step by step.
In the documentation. So
yeah, maybe in README or in the documentation. Yeah, so a little bit technical, but can be the part of the spec, I think.
Continue work on the test results schema.
Yeah,
so
that's exactly kind of task. That's exactly the task we created now. Yeah.
Yeah. Finalize the schema.
And we need some way to report like what the version of tests were run.
And this is again related. Okay, reference implementation.
I think Josh fixed everything, yeah.
Yeah, I think there was maybe some interest in having like a standing tracker item, but I think it's probably better if we don't, if we create specific issues where we need them. I think we're up to date right now.
There's a bunch of stuff in here, but not too much that we couldn't quickly go through right now. Is that what you want to do? Everybody happy with that?
Let's do it.
Column aliases should be unique or error. We should specify an error is produced if multiple columns with the same name are requested within a view definition. So I think this is something that was discussed, but I'm not sure if we've actually updated the spec.
Yeah, I don't think we have updated it, but yeah, I mean, it seems like we have consensus that, yeah, that should produce an error. And then, probably pending a spec update there.
Can we create tests for that? So did you agree how we creating failing like tests, or we decided not to write like failing tests?
We currently do have some failing tests.
I mean, tests which are testing errors. Yes. So here
we currently do have a couple. There's a flag called, I think, expected error. We use it twice right now, so we could add that if we want to. I don't yet have a good handle on when we want our tests to expect errors, but I think it's good for us to do that for things that are obviously wrong.
In my FHIR to OMOP, I've got a couple of cases where I've got two columns essentially that are the same, but they've got different where clauses attached or preconditions. I don't know if that'll come up or if there's a different way around it, making maybe just a more complex FHIR path expression. But just to note, I did have cases where I've got duplicate columns, but
that can be done through union. Yes, potentially. So because you can do like these cases through the union.
I think exactly that scenario is why it's hard to sort of derive names. But here we're actually just talking about the name. So if we require names, which we said we will, they need to be unique except in the case of union. So I think we need test cases both in and out of union and based on the naming that we're requiring, so that it's not actually dependent upon like things like the FHIR path expression and that sort of thing. Is that right? Am I saying that right?
I think yes.
Yeah. So John, to make sure I understand, you're saying this is taking the designated names of the columns and making sure that once they bubble up to the top, they're unique, versus like the FHIR path expressions could have duplicate kind of final kind of terminal segments. And that would be okay as long as the name associated with that field is unique.
It appears Graham is commenting on this in real time in a sort of very dense way that I'm trying to process, but maybe someone else can figure out what he means by this. But anyway, we can probably take that offline. But he's saying it makes sense to reuse column names, but it would be a mistake to require them to be unique.
Yeah, I think that's because Graham is trying like to reuse it for union. Me personally don't like this direction at all. So because for me it sounds like a very strange reuse stuff. Yeah, but okay, let's discuss in Zulip.
Maybe I actually made a duplicate ticket here.
Yeah, but that's maybe two different tasks, because so that's more about visualization page. Yes, so it's related to test results, but the visualization sub-project is kind of it's only one of potential implementations. Yes.
Okay. All right. Yep. So this is all up to date, and Nikolai, you're still happy
I will work on it. So I know there's some broken parts here, but I will fix it.
Test results standardization.
Let's duplicate. Yeah, for what we create.
So this is a duplicate of 171. Okay. Refactor system layers page. Does anybody remember what this refactoring might entail? Or has it already been done?
Yeah, I think that per argument, yeah, I'm not sure. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm gonna have to drop here in a minute, but yeah, I mean, there was a bunch of stuff there that didn't make sense that I kind of moved into like a miscellanea section, but yeah, I'm not sure if there's more that's needed there. I mean, if we don't know what needs to be done, then I'm sure I missed who logged that one, but we can ask that person, and if there's nothing more, then we can just close it out and log another issue if we need to.
Test tracker. Okay.
Yeah, that was done during Connectathon. I think we can close it. So
Okay, select.alias should only be present when select.path is used.
I think that's absolutely obsolete. I mean, that's not relevant after we kind of refactored things into columns. So I think we can close that.
Okay, view definition dot select description should include union. Nested select relative. Okay. So in here.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this one will be updated. I mean, once we get our union all document, this will go away once we get the union all documentation fixed. And so I'll take that to do. I mean, I guess you can assign that to me. Yeah, unfortunately, I need to take off a couple minutes before the hour here. So I'm going to have to drop. But yeah, feel free to assign that one to me. And then, yeah, or if there's others that make sense as well, send them my way too.
Yeah, so we'll actually add a new one, which is update union definition, right? And
sounds good. I mean, if you want to mark that previous one obsolete because of that. All right, but I got to run. So yeah, feel free to sign and I'll jump back in and catch up on the Zulip. Thanks.
Thanks, Ryan. And then to be done as part of 172. Add ID property in view definition. Okay. So this was
that one of our engineers created because we created CRUD for this resource in the FHIR server. And I think
this has been resolved, right? Because we did add the metadata.
Mm-hmm. And
Is that right?
Yeah, the main question: are we inheriting what the root resource for? Is it still base, or are we gonna switch it to domain resource or just resource?
Yeah. And we actually did talk a little bit about this at the last meeting with Graham, and talked about whether we have sort of a base resource definition and also like a shareable profile with maybe some additional constraints. And I'm still not totally clear on what the entry conditions are to proposing a new resource. Like, does this logical model fit what would usually be submitted in such a case, or should it, like you say, be inheriting from domain resource?
What the Graham vision? Are we eventually inherit from domain resource, or it's still going to be the base? I think that's about the status of view definition. Is view definition going to be the first class resource in the FHIR spec or not?
Okay.
Do we know Graham's vision on this? I don't know, Josh, John. When you talk to Graham, what Graham thinks about view definition?
I do not know.
Well, he did say at the last meeting that he expects that it would be a candidate resource. What I'm not clear about is you know, so we've added lots of different resources to the spec over time. And how did we handle those? Like, how did we define them? Did we define them in the same way as we have here with this logical model that sort of inherits from base, or is there some norm that we're not following? That's the part I'm not clear on. I think the intent is for it to be a candidate resource.
Yeah, so ideally you can just switch the like a base for resource to the main resource or resource, and it will the rest of content is going to be almost the same. So because that's just and the kind, yes. So that's all of them are just structure definition with the different kinds. So and if it's going to be the candidate, then the kind will become resource, and the base will become the main resource instead of base.
Yeah, we also talked about the fact that it's not currently usable. It's not usable in its unconstrained form for some use cases relating to it being a full resource. Like, for example, sharing it around, passing it around, it having a life cycle, referring to it like in another operation or something. You would actually have to have some sort of, like, you would have to have URL or whatever at least. And Graham was saying maybe that lives in the pattern that we've adopted for other things is to have sort of a shareable profile that you have some extra constraints in or whatever, but that's as far as we got with the discussion. So I'll keep going in the interest of, oh, we're actually over, but the true believers are still here. Informative versus normative. I just thought that we actually have sort of a mixture of content in the documentation. Some of it's not clear as to whether it's actually a spec or whether it's just sort of informative content. So I thought it would be good to label it like clearly, like, and we do that in other parts of the FHIR spec as well.
I think we need Ryan to discuss this, no? Our main editor. I think we're a little bit out of time and we lose Ryan and then I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we can continue this.
Yeah, let's walk quickly through the issues and yeah.
Value set codes table should have code system version.
It's still open question. Yes, we didn't discuss a lot value sets since the beginning.
Yeah. Content is duplicated on columnar schema guidance page. Actually, I'm not sure if this has been fixed or not, but at one point the whole thing was actually doubled up. Yeah, it is. Yeah, I think it is. So we just need to fix up that page. Columnar types should include all R5 primitive types. So yeah, there's a few of these tickets relating to the columnar schema guidance, which I think we do need to have another look at and just tidy it up a bit. Again, I think this is the columnar schema guidance. Enhance UX of the IG. Has this been done?
I think it is.
Okay. Create diagram with layered view. Oh yeah, I remember this. I think this has been merged, right? So we can close this. Work on test cases for spec. I think this is a bit overly general.
Yeah, but it was very early. So I think let's close this.
Well, that looks like maybe in the next meeting we can talk about some of these things and figure out what to prioritize. All right. Sorry for going over time.
That's all right. This is good.
Yep. Thank you, guys.
Okay. Have a good week.